So, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think we're winning this one. The Anheuser-Busch fiasco is only getting worse. And as of right now, I believe, what is their market cap drop off? We'll throw it over to DC Drano, who says as of 4/12, their loss is $6.65 billion in company value. The bleeding hasn't stopped. On the contrary, it's only getting worse. And boy, my friends, do we have some updates. Because let me just throw it to our good friends over at CNN, who produced this masterpiece. Bud Light's inclusive ad campaigns are good for business, experts say. Experts, huh? Oh, boy. Oh, wow. You know, when I saw this, after looking at their market cap drop-off of $6.65 billion, which is like 4 or 5%, that's significant for people who are holding that stock. When I saw all that, and then I saw CNN rush in and say, actually, it's a good thing. Wow. And here's where I want to start, actually. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan defended Bud Light. He called it goofy and silly to boycott, and I think it's because Joe does not know why people are upset, what the pushback is about. He thinks it's about inclusivity. That's not what people are. Well, you could argue if it's the cult mentality, people don't like the cult stuff. But the issue isn't that a group of people are simply going to enjoy a beer. The issue is the targeting of children. That's the important point here. So Joe Rogan goes on his show, cracks open a beer, says the whole thing is silly. And so we'll start here. And I want to mention one thing before we do get started. It's called over-target. As I've mentioned in many of these videos, whenever I talk about this, an important context that I must reiterate for those who may not have seen my other videos, who do not understand what's going on with the Bud Light controversy. I have made a ton of videos. I've been very critical of the left on a lot of different issues. Namely, in many of these videos, I point out that the sterilization of their children and the abortion of their children will result in the end of their genetic line and the ceasing of their ideology. Hence why they want to target your kids in schools. I have put out numerous tweets saying things like, spay and neuter your children to prevent overpopulation. Not once has anything I've ever said related to that resulted in a hit piece against me. As far as I know, maybe on the smaller side, but I'm talking about the big outlets. When I say things like, abort your kids and you will cease to exist and the future will be conservative, they say nothing. I say, sterilize your children and yourself. They say nothing. But I talk about one little old beer boycott. And boy, do they go insane. Tim Pool, stupid boycott, blah, blah, blah. And then CNN chimes in and says, everything's A-okay. There's two things I see here. One, people are probably losing a lot of money. $6.65 billion lost in market cap probably sends alarm bells to a lot of people in finance. There's also rumors about put options being put in place. And that means people are starting to bet against Anheuser-Busch's stock. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how long this can persist, but I will absolutely enjoy going after Anheuser-Busch and making sure we persist in our conversation around why you should not buy Bud Light. Here's a simple version. And then we'll talk about Joe Rogan. There's also another controversy, I guess. Nike also sponsored Dylan Mulvaney, and now there's the Burn Bra Challenge. And Nike stock's doing well. And I'll tell you what this is all about. You go after a man's beer, and you're gonna get some controversy. Jesse Kelly on Timcast IRL last night said that for the first time, his normie neighbors who don't pay attention to anything came over and said, what's going on with Bud Light? I feel bad buying it. Wow. All of a sudden, regular people who don't care about politics are talking politics. They made a mistake going for beer, especially the number one beer. So let's make a few things clear. The VP of marketing said they did this change. They sponsored Dylan Mulvaney because they need to change their dying brand. But it's not dying. It's the top selling beer. In fact, just this month, they saw a bump in stock. Let me show you this. Anheuser-Busch stock over the past week is down 4.46%. Now, as of this morning, they're up 1%. We'll see how that goes through the rest of the day. Many people are pointing out that the Federal Reserve's injection of the Fed's injection of money into the system has resulted in basically every stock going up. But for all we know, based on the current trend, it should continue to decrease, but maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. Here's what matters. Before the controversy, Oh boy, was it so good. It was so good. At the end of March, they were jumping up. They were at a point this month where Anheuser-Busch was at 10%. Understand what that means, 10%. That means if you have $100,000 in the bank and you invested in Anheuser-Busch InBev, this month alone, you made $10,000. Whoa. Now it's only 6.56%. Oh, geez. And worse still, in the last 5 days, 4.46% down. So yeah, it's having an impact. And that's why CNN is rushing. Let me tell you why this is so important. As I've stated before, and I'll say to anybody who's new to what's going on here, the easiest culture war battle we have ever faced, and the most significant. Regular people want to know what's going on with their beer. And the only thing you have to do to win this culture war battle is buy a different beer. Isn't that easy? You go to the grocery store, you say, Bud Light, meh, I'll get something else. Now, I'm not saying Miller Coors is the best alternative because some people don't like their Pride campaign stuff. I don't care about that. I literally do not care if somebody wants to market to the LGBTQ community. These are people who drink beer as well, by all means. But Dylan Mulvaney is not that. Dylan Mulvaney's audience are children. They're promoting alcohol to children, and they're promoting this narcissistic algorithmic derangement to children. That, for me, is the issue. So Joe Rogan is wrong. And let's read what he said on his show, and I'll break down for anybody who doesn't quite understand. Excuse me. Newsweek writes, Joe Rogan and his guest drank Bud Light and called the controversy surrounding the brand goofy on his recent podcast episode. Some people are boycotting the beer's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, after a personalized can of Bud Light was sent to trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. The ad partnership led to furious backlash with people destroying cans of Bud Light, including Kid Rock. Full stop. It wasn't just that. It's that Dylan Mulvaney was sponsored by Bud Light with Bud Light cans as a brand ambassador. Why are you having someone market beer to children? That's my first question, but let's continue. Rogan, known for offering controversial opinions on his podcast and speaking his mind, seemingly quelled the drama surrounding Bud Light by dismissing the issue. On Wednesday's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, Rogan and his guest, comedian Sam Talent, opened up a can of Bud Light each and joked about being allies as they proposed a toast. Here's my take. What they're doing is just spreading the brand to an extra group of people. Why, if something is good, do you give an F who's got it? Rogan then asked if people would react the same way if Antifa got into cheesecake. Would people boycott the Cheesecake Factory? Well, let's talk about this. Joe Rogan's wrong. That's fine. He's wrong about a lot of things. So am I. The issue here is the first issue on the surface. I wonder if Joe Rogan going to Spotify has insulated himself from the reaction of his audience. For me, I noticed this when I saw a major spike in viewership around these videos. I am not hiding that fact. I am, in fact, making that point. I'm sure many leftists will say, Tim's only talking about this because he's getting views. What I saw was interest. People cared about the issue, and that matters. There are a lot of issues I beg people to pay attention to. They don't. And I say, if we focus on this, we can maybe win a culture war battle. But for once, we saw tremendous response. People said, okay, I'm finally listening. And I said, wow. Okay, guys, here's what we do. Don't buy any beer from Anheuser-Busch. It's an opportunity to actually get a corporation to apologize and shift the narrative at least a little bit. Many of these corporations are all about ESG. And if we can force an apology, we can crack that shell. That's why this matters. Now, as to why there's actually controversy, Dylan Mulvaney's primary audience is millions of teenagers. Dylan Mulvaney, I do not believe, is trans. Dylan Mulvaney is a narcissistic sociopath, one of the most dangerous people to be placed in front of a camera, who only just so desperately wants you to look at their face. Now, of course, people have said, don't talk about Dylan Mulvaney, Tim. You're only making them more popular. And I don't care about any of that. That doesn't mean anything to me. They say, don't address a controversy because you might make someone more famous. I don't care. I'm not here to not make someone famous or make someone famous. I'm here to talk about principal issues and what we can do to change the system. Dylan Mulvaney's already got 11 million followers. I don't think my videos matter all that much. Now, here's the issue. Joe Rogan does not understand the sentiment people have pertaining to Bud Light, why they're upset about it. They don't want these things promoted to children. They don't want the trans issues. They don't want the alcohol issues. But more importantly, Dylan Mulvaney represents sociopathy. the worst malignant kind. So if you have someone who is an adult, trans person, promoting beer, most people don't care, which is why you have not seen this controversy. But if you're talking about the expansion of stuff that results in children harming themselves, despite the fact that in Europe they've ended this stuff, now people are getting upset. So Joe Rogan says, if you're trying to spread a brand to an extra group of people, why do you give an F who's got it? Because we don't want beer spread to children. I mean, first of all, I don't like drinking beer, okay? I think beer is bad for you. You probably shouldn't drink it. So that's just my view. But I understand people love beer. Beer is like a human thing. Beer brings people together. I totally respect it. By all means, have a beer, just don't drive. We're not talking about an extra group of people, Joe. We're talking about kids. We're talking about 15-year-olds. We do not need someone promoting drinking booze to 15-year-olds. We just don't need that. Simply put, it's weird that I have to say that. I think the drinking age should be 18. Don't get me wrong. There are these stories about teenagers in college who get alcohol poisoning and then die. Because the other young people are like, they're adults, by the way. Young adults are like, if we bring this our friend to the hospital, we're going to get in trouble. Underage drinking, it's not allowed. The drinking age should be 18. You should be allowed to drink if you're an adult. But you shouldn't be. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me that they hired a person to market booze to children. I mean, how is that? What is this? Here we go. Rogan then says, on the other hand, I love Kid Rock's videos. I love the kind of thinking. Not that I even agree with it. I like wild people. I like a dude who takes a machine gun to stacks of Bud Lights. It's like Anheuser-Busch, but I mean, where's he going to go now? You going to go to Coors Light? Don't they support LGBTQ? You see, look, man, Joe doesn't understand this. That's what I think. You know, I texted him and I was like, it's just about kids. It is about not promoting these things to children. Dylan Mulvaney is also deeply offensive to women as adults. And so one of the issues surrounding this, I mean, look, I got to put it this way. Just if you end up seeing this, all right? Imagine if Anheuser-Busch sponsored Alex Jones and gave him a customized Alex Jones can. Now, I understand you or I might like Alex Jones. We think he's a funny guy. We think he's smart. We think he's sometimes wrong. But you do understand that people would be angry about it, right? So listen, Dylan Mulvaney isn't just targeting children with drinking booze and being a sociopath. Dylan Mulvaney is also a highly divisive figure that is deeply offensive to many trans people and many women. The issue is just profound. Do not sponsor someone who is so reviled. It's funny because, they act like, well, but Dylan Mulvaney's got 11 million followers. Sure. Sacrifice 100 million customers for one person with 11 million followers who probably only reaches around 1 million people who could even buy your beer. Unless the goal is to get underage drinking. The thing is about this Dylan Mulvaney thing is like, it's just someone who wants a lot of attention. Rogan continued. You're giving that someone a lot of attention and you're trying to reach another audience. I saw it and I was like, what the F is this? My initial reaction is like, this is silly. I think it's goofy because I think that person is goofy. But if you want to hire a goofy person, like, who gives an ish? Okay, there's a bunch of factors here. An opportunity to get regular people to understand what's going on with social media. Finally, people pushing back against social media algorithmic manipulation and the crisis being generated by these platforms promoting what is effectively Elsagate incarnate. This is a major culture war battle. And I think we absolutely do need to stand up now. We have some new details yesterday that came from the Daily Wire that I think matter. New details emerge over mistake that led to Bud Light's paid marketing engagement with trans influencer. You see, apparently, senior management didn't even know it was happening. Apparently, here's what's happened. Dylan Mulvaney was sent a promo pack. A lot of people get sent these things. They probably just wanted Dylan Mulvaney to drink the beer. But Dylan Mulvaney is a malignant, narcissistic sociopath. And so apparently the story is a bunch of influencers get sent this little box with commemorative cans. Bud Light was not intending to put Dylan Mulvaney on a billboard, but Dylan Mulvaney is. Dylan Mulvaney is such a deranged psychopath that they made themselves the prominent face of Bud Light. And Bud Light did not think that was going to happen. You reap what you sow, Bud Light. So Daily Wire goes on to explain the start of the controversy. Excuse me. They say, blah, 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 blah. The Daily Wire spoke with two sources close to the situation who also claimed the decision to have Mulvaney be part of advertising campaign was not approved. Not one at a senior level was aware this was happening, said one source who was granted anonymity. Some low-level marketing staffer who helps manage the hundreds of influencer engagements they do must have thought it was no big deal. Obviously, it was, and it's a shame because they have a well-earned reputation for just being America's beer, not a political company. It was a mistake. A second source claimed that a lower-level employee had made the decision to include Mulvaney in the campaign, a move that appears to have cost the company $5 billion, now $6.65 billion in market value. The backlash to the iconic American beer brand was so intense that Budweiser distributor in Missouri canceled an event with the company's famous Clydesdale horses because everything was still sensitive. Now, here's what I think here. I think they may be lying. They don't want to issue an apology. Well, do not buy Anheuser-Busch until they do. Here's what I think. I think they're reeling from this. I think they made a bad choice. I think people are deeply offended by this. Anheuser-Busch's vice president of communications locked her Twitter account in recent days. So what do? PR 101, ignore the problem. But that's not working. So let's move on to PR 102. A couple of anonymous individuals working with the company will try to say it was a mistake, feign ignorance. We had no idea this was going to happen. Oh, geez. It's not enough. Apologize. I'll tell you this. I don't drink beer, but if Anheuser-Busch apologizes and says we did not intend to sponsor someone so divisive as Dylan Mulvaney, if they come out publicly as a corporation and say, we understand the hurt we've caused to all of you and we apologize, Dylan Mulvaney should not receive any kind of funding or support from us. If they do that, the first thing I will do is I will buy out an entire liquor store supply of Anheuser-Busch. I will then make a video of all of us sitting around cracking beers and being like, you know what? We've decided to become drinkers. We're not big on alcohol, but now we're going to be. Because I want to stress that if this company does the right thing and apologizes to all of us that they've offended, that we will then return as customers and say, thank you all so much. The path to success comes in apologizing. And I got this tweet from Cenk Uygur that I want to point out. I don't have it pulled up right now. I was going to talk about it later. But he mentions that the right will welcome anyone who agrees with even 5% of their platform, whereas the left will shun anyone who disagrees with as little as 0.5. The point is, he was saying, you could come out and be like, you could say you're a leftist, you're pro-universal health care, you hate Donald Trump, you all of these things. You're for the war in Ukraine, but actually you think that Joe Biden is super corrupt and Hunter Biden is a criminal, and the right will be like, dude, really do appreciate it. Why don't you come hang out and have a conversation? If you're on the left and you say, I agree with you on all of these things, but I do think Hunter Biden's a crook, they will kick you out. This is my point. I want it to be known, Bud Light, that you are about to face the most amazing opportunity of your storied American brand career. And that is, by coming out and apologizing, not only will you recover from this, you will earn many new customers. It's a great opportunity. In fact, I would argue this. A tremendous opportunity for any brand would be to come out in support of someone as divisive and off-putting as Dylan Mulvaney, and then a week later go, whoa, we had no idea. I apologize. You know why? Because then we're going to buy your product. Then you will win us over. One thing I think people need to consider, I don't know if I have the story pulled up, is that maybe I have it over here, actually. Is this it? Yep, here we go. Stonewall Inn bans Anheuser-Busch beer for Pride weekend to protest anti-LGBTQ donations. Let's go back to 2021. Anheuser-Busch was targeted by LGBTQ groups. A couple years later, Anheuser-Busch was still the top-selling beer. Their stock jumped 10% in 1 month, and everything was going great. You see, Anheuser-Busch ignored this, and they did fine. But I want to make sure this is clear, too, as we begin to wrap this up, so that everybody can understand, especially individuals like Joe Rogan. The issue here is this. It's not about someone being gay, LGBT, or trans. Dylan Mulvaney is evil. And let me explain. I don't say that in any kind of religious context. I say Dylan Mulvaney is the banality of evil. You look at the videos of Dylan desperately trying to be famous, and you see this person's only intent is to do whatever it takes to be famous. TikTok has an algorithm. It promotes certain content. Dylan Mulvaney tried to be famous by doing animal content, by doing nature content, and none of it worked. As soon as Dylan Mulvaney jumped on the trans bandwagon, all of a sudden they were getting millions of views. Interesting. Dylan doesn't care about any of this stuff. Dylan wants power. It is narcissistic sociopathy. This should not be supported by any corporation or any of us. Joe is not that guy. Joe's a genuine dude who believes what he believes and is talented and funny. That works for him. Dylan Mulvaney is a vapid narcissist with no talent. And the funny thing is there are people who have said stuff like, I can't remember who it was that came on the show, and they were like, oh, Dylan Mulvaney's got some talent there. And I'm like, no, Dylan Mulvaney doesn't. That's why Dylan Mulvaney could not get famous until they targeted the algorithm in the most perfect way. That's the reality of it. I don't care if trans people drink beer. I don't care if trans people exist. I wish them all the best. I want them happiness. I want them peace, love, and freedom. And that no beef. I don't care. I don't care if Bud Light came out and went to any trans person and said, here's a beer. You're sponsored. The issue for me is that Dylan Mulvaney is a narcissist, sociopath, algorithmically manipulating fraud who targets children with a corrupt ideology and now with alcohol. And I just don't like it. I don't want that stuff in front of kids. Now, many other people may think it's about, politics and LGBTQ stuff. The other simple way to put it is it's the culture war. Bud Light said, we hereby announce we are entering the fray in the culture war and we're against you. That's really the simplest way to put it. We oppose you. That's what they said. They said, you are our enemy. And you know what? Many liberals and leftists actually stated that too. In a viral video, a woman says, it's not so much that you're boycotting them, but they are disregarding you as a customer. That's the point. They spat in the face of their customers. That's the simplest way to put it. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. And thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.